The imposter syndrome. This is something that we are talking about today. Now, this is Now Tell Us, and I'm your host, Anthony Murore. At Now Tell Us, we have guests come and tell us stories, they come and inspire us, they come and educate us on a subject. And always, we have great guests who come and just bring value to this podcast. And we like it that you're here. We love it that you are watching or listening. Now, if you get to listen to this live, please let us know from where you're listening us from. If you watch it or listen to it after we've recorded, we also appreciate you and we thank you. Please also tell us where you're watching us and any other thing that you want to talk to us about this episode. Please remember to share this episode with all your friends. It's important to us. Subscribe to our channel, and yeah, let's get going. Today we have a guest known as Dagna Bieda, who's gonna be here shortly to tell us exactly what we mentioned about imposter syndrome. And I don't want to take one more minute because I know that she has a lot to share with us. So why don't you join me as we go to meet our special guest today? Here we go. Hello, Dagna.
Hey Anthony, how's it going?
It's going on well. How about your side?
Pretty good. I'm excited to be here today. Thanks for having
Yes.
me.
And we are also excited that you're here with us today. Now tell us, we are always curious to know from which part of the world we are connecting with people.
So, I'm currently located in Charlotte, North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
but originally I am from Poland. So, I moved across continents and yeah, it's been interesting transition.
Yeah, transitions are good. And flying from one country to the other, from one continent to the other, is an experience. And I don't know how it was for you when you moved there.
Yeah, the most incredible thing is that I moved here with literally two suitcases.
Hmm.
I had all of my belongings packed into two suitcases when I moved. And right now I have like a whole house full of stuff and I'm like, where did it come from, you know?
How far back was that? That when you moved there?
It was 9 years ago when I moved from Poland to United States.
Oh, okay. So you were still, I mean, you were an adult by the time that you. What made
Yes.
you move? What came to mind to make you move? And had you cleared college? Were you working? And how did it come that you just moved?
So I'm an engineer by training, and I got all my training back in Poland in one of the best universities in my home country. And essentially, after graduating and working in a regular job, I ended up visiting my friends, going backpacking through Europe. And during a weekend in one of those hostels in Lviv, Ukraine, is where I met someone. And that someone turned out to be a special someone. I fell in love and ended up moving across the Atlantic so we could be together. Now,
Mm.
my husband, we met backpacking in Europe. And yeah, people do crazy things when they're in love.
Yeah,
I
they do.
moved.
They do. They do. So your husband is from the States.
Yes, he's a
He was also
citizen.
backpacking
Well,
with.
he is.
Yeah.
Um, his family comes from Dominican Republic, but he was born here. So yeah.
Yeah, people do some interesting things, and if love makes you move, then that's a good one. Because there are other things that make other people move, and they're not so happy about that move. And I believe that you're happy, whatever it is that you are. You,
Agreed.
you okay? That's good. So if we may go back a bit to when you were growing back in Poland, in your younger years, going to school, even up to the point that you went to college? How was it? How what were the
You know,
experiences you share with us?
when I was growing up, I really wanted to like build the future,
Mm,
whatever that means in the mind of a 15-year-old, right? But it was really important for me to do something impactful and meaningful and put my talents to good use. So I really loved math when I was a kid and like primary, elementary, and high school. So I ended up picking engineering degree.
mm,
And the one that was like the most futuristic sounding in my college of choice was robotics. So I ended up enrolling in Wrocław University of Technology, studying control engineering and robotics. And I had programming as like part of my curriculum because in Poland it's kind of very strict how your curriculum looks like, not like United States. But I hated programming back then. You know, initially it was like really hard and really daunting, and I felt like most of the time I had no idea what I was doing. But I was like, ah, fine. I just want to build robots, so I just have to like pass my classes and move on, and then I can build robots, and that's creating the future.
mm,
And in reality, it turns out that the pace of building robots was too slow for me at that point in my career.
mm,
I really wanted to go fast. I want to grow in my career. I wanted to get promotions and have impact. And the robots that I was building, they were sponsored by European Union. We were having like a project based funding, and the company I worked for at a time was working with different universities across Europe, some in Germany, some in Greece, some in Poland. And we were trying to create robots to the specification depending on the project.
mm,
But I realized that once you build them, they're kind of locked up in a lab, and maybe some students would work with them, but
mm,
it's the kind of impact that I was looking for, you know, Anthony. And so I ended up moving to into software programming because that career seemed to be more fast paced.
mm,
It was more interesting, and I just followed my curiosity. I thought I would have more impact, and they would pay me more money too, you know.
mm, mm,
Being a software engineer pays pretty well. At the time is when I met my husband. So I ended up being a software engineer both in Poland and in United States, and I got to experience the difference, the cultural differences that could be having impact on your career without you even being aware that
mm,
there are some differences, right?
mm.
In terms of like setting expectations, how you collaborate with other people, how you communicate, things like that. So that's really part of my story, how I got from, you know, a kid into engineering and into United States.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. It's not just everybody that goes into engineering and then software development. So you're a special one, and we are blessed to have you here today because I know
Thank you.
there. Yeah. Uh, Today we're talking about getting past the imposter syndrome. Now, in your going through the course that you took in your working environment, and you talk about some differences that you've experienced. Has this something got something to do with the imposter syndrome? Have you experienced such? Now, because this is not an easy area, have you experienced it? What we are just discussing today?
So I did experience imposter syndrome early in my career as a software engineer
Mm-hmm.
because it was just terrifying. Like I felt like I have no idea what it is that I'm doing, right? And early on in my career, I quickly realized that in order to get past the imposter syndrome, instead of being stuck in your head and focused on, you know, spiraling in your own mind, like, oh, I don't deserve to be here. What if the people will find out? Like, I'm not worthy of getting this money, getting this paycheck, having this position. We have to get out of our own head and get real time feedback from
Mm-hmm.
either people who work around us or from the marketplace, the environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, one way that I because right now I have moved away from software engineering and I coach engineers and ambitious professionals in tech. And I've noticed that whenever you're able to validate the reality of what your skills are, where do you actually belong, how does marketplace influence what you can ask for in an interview setting, for example,
Mm-hmm.
that helps you get out of your own head. And I've experienced the imposter syndrome again early at the beginning in my career as a software engineer, and then as a coach too, because I was mentoring younger people as a senior engineer. But as a starting coach, like, I didn't know, can I do this? Is it really like something that I can make into a business? So the beginnings, and I see it all the time too, because I work with people from individual contributors all the way to like a CTO, a chief technology officer of a smaller to mid-sized startup. And I
Mm.
see that every time that a person steps into a new role, a lot of the time the imposter syndrome comes back, like, comes up, that nagging feeling that perhaps you don't belong where you currently are, that you don't deserve to be where you are. And when people will find out that you have some gaps in your skills or mindset, then they're going to kick you out from your position. There'll be like negative consequences,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the reality is that it is possible to get past that imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm. And we are going to learn that from you today. Now, I discover that you've written a book, or many books, maybe. Can you tell us about that?
One
One book.
specific, Brain Refactor.
Okay.
And this particular book talks about how you can optimize your internal code to thrive in tech and engineering and get more success, fulfillment, money, opportunities, impact, and growth. And
Mm.
the reason why you can get all these things that I just mentioned is because in my book, I dive into how, as a coach, I help my clients get past the imposter syndrome, burnout, trouble dealing with other people, or self marketing struggles. So these are the four common obstacles that really hold people back in their career. And, working as a coach and also in my own journey, I realized that a lot of the time, the obstacle is you,
Mm.
right? And how you think about the problem. And it's drawing on my engineering background, I could see the parallels how you know, brain works like code. And as a software engineer, what would I do? I would, every time that something wasn't working, I would just dive into the code and then reprogram whatever was not working,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so turns out the same principles apply to your brain, because what's inside here is legacy mental programming that was created because of the lifetime of experiences that you've had. And if you're able to dive into that code base and pinpoint, okay, this is a belief that is telling me that I don't belong where I am right now. Let me go ahead and reprogram it. And instead of believing that, I'm going to believe that I am new in this position. So obviously, I need some time to gain the skills, to gain the mastery, to become better at what it is that I'm doing. And then you kind of program it back in, boom, and you're done. That's how you get past imposter syndrome.
We're gonna get deeper into that, but just before we get deeper into that, I'm curious to know, how did the book come to be? How did it come about? What triggered it? What inspired it?
So, Anthony, I did mention I met my husband while traveling.
Yeah.
And then when we actually got married, we ended up going on a 4-month honeymoon trip, and we visited all the countries in Southeast Asia.
Hmm.
And basically, during those travels, I got this insight of writing a book. And I thought, I moved from a junior to senior software engineer position in like 2 years and a few months. That's really fast.
Wow.
Let me write about it so that I can share that knowledge and wisdom with other people. And that
Mm-hmm.
was 7 years ago. So I created like a mind map with different chapters of what it is that I would like to talk about with people who are starting their career in software or
Mm-hmm.
in tech in general, on how they can advance their careers. And for 5 years, I didn't do really anything with that project until 2 years ago, I decided, no, this is it. I've been coaching people for 5 years. I have moved from being a software engineer to coaching. I validated that what I have to say not only worked for me, but also works for all these people that I've worked with.
Mm,
And that's when I realized, no, I have to put it into writing. And I thought initially that writing a book would take 6 months. It ended up taking 18 months of writing
mhm,
and then another 6 months of production. So like getting the cover designed, and getting all the layout inside and images ready. That took another 6 months, and finally the book is here. It's available on Amazon. The official launch is October 1st,
wow.
which is when the Kindle will launch. At
Mhm,
this point, there's a soft cover available on Amazon. In the US marketplace, it's at $6, because I'm still kind of getting more feedback from beta readers.
mhm.
But by October 1st, I'm going to raise the price to $19 so that I can use the proceeds from the book to advertise it so it can reach a wider audience. I really believe that it has valuable stuff inside and it can change people's lives.
Yeah, definitely. If you took that long to write it, then I expect there is something that went into it. Some research, some. Did you share some personal stories in there? Because we love
Oh,
stories.
absolutely. Yes. There's a lot of my personal stories.
Mm-hmm,
And in the chapters that talk about imposter syndrome, burnout, trouble dealing with other people, and self marketing struggles, these have also case studies of my clients that I've worked with that I help them get past those obstacles. And so, for whoever is interested in reading, even if you're not in tech and engineering world, but just are interested in how you could apply the principles of programming to your own personal development,
mm-hmm.
that book is for you.
Now that's a good one that you put in that there because I was going into that area, saying we have people who are listening to us that are not in tech, they are not software engineers, and they they also experience this. I mean, someone is in a position and they start asking themselves, "Hey, am I fit to be in this position? Am I going to just be productive, whatever it is that I am?" So these are questions that maybe you could help them answer through the stories, through the insights that you share in your book. But maybe you can dive us deeper into, yeah. I see the debugging the imposter syndrome. That's in chapter 4. Right.
That's exactly right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for just us to maybe get to know, to identify, yes, this is a position I'm at now, and how do I get out of here using some basic terminologies and ideas. Let's dive us deeper, please.
Okay. Is it okay if I read a piece of the book itself?
Definitely, go ahead.
Awesome. So I'm exactly in that chapter that you mentioned,
Mm,
debugging imposter syndrome. And basically, I talk about Linda's story. Linda is a software engineer who got recently promoted, and she felt very comfortable in her role as an individual contributor. But now she stepped into a more managerial track, right? And so she's working really hard to catch up with the skills, but unfortunately, the team that she was leading created a buggy code which blew up in production, which basically means the new app that they released came back with a bug and the users were not able to click through the buttons and they were not able to do the action that they were supposed to do, which costs the company money.
mhm.
So now let me read you the piece that talks about the imposter syndrome versus growing pains. Um, okay, let's start reading and then we'll go and analyze the piece. Linda's internal programming will determine if the challenge of her new role is overwhelming or if it's beneficial. The outcome has nothing to do with the situation itself, with that failure that I mentioned, and everything to do with how her mental programming interprets that event of failure. Either imposter syndrome will take over, allowing the overwhelm to kick in, or she can lean into the growing pains and experience a transformative growth spurt. What happens next all depends on the internal mental programming that assigns meaning to what is going on around her. If Linda's legacy mental code is running the imposter syndrome routines, she might think, I knew I wasn't cut out for this role. I've been just fooling everyone and it's blown up right in my face. Everyone probably thinks I am incompetent now. I can't believe I let this happen. I shouldn't have been promoted. I'm not capable of handling this level of responsibility. My luck has run out. I'm not skilled enough for this job. It's clear that I don't belong here. That's the imposter syndrome screaming super loud inside of her mind.
Mm-hmm.
But if Linda's mental code allows her to lean into the growing pains, she probably thinks something like this. That was a major setback, but it's all part of the learning process. I need to figure out what went wrong and how can I prevent it in the future. And even though this failure is tough to swallow, I know it doesn't define me. It doesn't define my abilities or my worth. I mean, I gotta be real. I'm new to this role and I haven't found my footing yet. I'm facing new challenges, the kind I haven't faced before. And failures, well, they're inevitable, but I've overcome challenges before. I am capable of learning from those mistakes and improving. So I'm going to stay focused, I'm going to stay positive, seek feedback, and keep moving forward.
It's a good one.
Notice that what happened externally didn't change. Nothing changed, right? Her team is exactly in the same situation that it was before.
Yeah.
It's really all about the thoughts that she's thinking and how her internal mental code assigns the meaning to what happened around her. So, by changing the code of how she interprets the events around her, we're able to switch from imposter syndrome into growing pains because it's still going to be uncomfortable. It's still going to be growth, is going to be, you know, challenging and painful at times,
Yeah. Growth is painful. I agree with you.
but
So
it's so worth it,
it's
right?
worth it. It's worth every penny. I mean, it's a good one. So, wow, that's wonderful. Um, you talk about thinking, and we are always saying here when we are talking about personal growth that everything begins and ends with a thought. Everything that has ever been created, everything that is going to exist starts with a thought. And so when you talk about us coding our, I mean, going into the code of our mind, that's important. That reminds us that whatever it is going to happen in our lives is all dependent on how we are going to respond from what we think.
I agree. And I mean, we all have different obstacles that we're facing.
Hmm.
We're set in different environments. We are starting from a different point in life just by being born in a certain family or a certain part of the world, right?
Hmm.
But we still have that control over the direction that we're choosing in our life.
Yeah, sure. And then when we talk about the thought and how thought can influence the direction that we move in life, I also consider that thought affects what we do. And also, at many times, what we do also affects the thoughts that we engage in. How does that come into working? Are there some activities that maybe you recommend to people who can use, I mean, who are in that state and they can use the tools, those ideas, those actions, and get out of that position, getting,
Absolutely.
yeah, let us.
So, my favorite exercise that I recommend my clients do is called mirror exercise. And I
Mm,
actually learned about it from Jack Canfield.
mm,
And basically, the exercise is as follows. Say at night before you go to bed and you do your evening routine, let's say you brush your teeth. The moment you're done brushing your teeth, I want you to look yourself in the eyes in the mirror and start noticing all the little things that you did good that
mm,
particular day or that went well that particular day. Here's why: our brains are not wired to notice the good. to notice the things that we're doing in order to move in the right direction. We have implemented what I call negativity bias, and basically that helped us survive from when humans as a species were created on Earth. Being hyper vigilant to any negative or deadly elements of our environment was critical.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is our minds, our modern minds, are still running that code. So basically, what happens is we tend to notice the negative, we
Mm-hmm.
tend to notice the bad. But right now, you don't need to go and hunt out for your food, most likely. Just go to a grocery store,
Yeah.
right? So that kind of negativity bias is going to skew you towards just finding things that are not necessarily deadly, but things that are wasting your mental power. So
Mm-hmm.
by doing mirror exercise try for a month, every single day, you'll notice that the hardware of your brain is going to start changing and shifting and noticing more of the good things that are happening in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Not naturally, because you're doing the work in order to reprogram and rewire the thoughts that are running in your mind. And that's actually one of the core exercises that I recommend people who are trying to get past imposter syndrome, because you'll notice the imposter syndrome is all about that negative self-talk, that focus on negativity and highlighting the negativity. So
Yeah.
if you can start putting weights the other way around towards what's positive, you'll notice the imposter syndrome volume also going down significantly,
Mm.
because now it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm an idiot. You're like, okay, that didn't go well, but I can do better, right? So you have a more realistic kind of approach because you're bringing those weights kind of back into balance by training your brain to noticing what's good in your life.
Wow. Uh, this comes to mind that it so happens that we are the worst enemies of ourselves. Someone said that. I mean,
Yes.
because I'm always, most of us are very judgmental of our looks, our positions, our color, our height, our weight, and always looking for that, to identify that thing that is negative with them, instead of focusing on the good and working on what they can improve on, whatever it is that is possible for them. And yes, I get from that, that you've shared, that it's possible to get that past imposter syndrome, focusing on the positive, working on it, and just not being so judgmental on ourselves.
It takes time,
It
but it's
takes time.
definitely possible.
Anything worthwhile takes time. It's not
That's true.
anything worthwhile takes time. So
Very true.
we get that. Yeah. Wow. Wow. This is wonderful, and yeah, we appreciate. So whoever it is that is out there and is listening to us or watching us, either live or the recorded version, I hope that you've got some insights from this, what we have shared here, and what actually comes from the book that Dagna has done, Brain Refactor, that you can find on Amazon, or even going to her website that is right there on the screen, the mindfuldev.com. If you can just go and get it or connect with Dagna, you get more insights. And maybe how is it working with you? Can you maybe tell us how is it? How does one come to work with you? And are you specifically looking on tech and software developers, or you're also open to other people who could be growing in their careers or doing some big things out there that need some coaching?
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
So I focus on people in tech and engineering because that's my background. That's exactly where I came from.
Yeah.
So I totally and exactly understand what these kinds of people are going through in their careers.
Hmm.
But what I highly recommend is starting with the book first, because
Okay.
if you can read it and you see that it resonates, but you still want more personalized coaching, then feel free to reach out to me. But start with the book first because there's already a wealth of knowledge that is contained in here, and I highly recommend reading this first
Okay,
before
that's
reaching out to me.
yeah.
And
So
then there's also detailed instruction on how to get in touch with me in the book itself. But I would love to connect on LinkedIn, and occasionally I post on Twitter too.
that's wonderful. Which is currently X.
That's right, X.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. So wow, Dagna, we are so appreciative of your presence here today and everything that you shared with us.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Anthony. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yes, thank you. And now, even before we go, we love hearing some last words from our guest to tell us something that we can always remember, maybe based on what we discussed today, or just a general life idea that you have and you embrace. What is it?
Absolutely. So, the one thing I would hope you remember from this entire conversation is that your brain works like code, which means you can reprogram anything that's not working.
As simple as that. Something that you should always remember. Whatever is not working, you can reprogram and make it work.
That's right.
Yes. So, oh yeah, that's wonderful, Dagna, and that's just about it. Thank you for even those last words. For those who've been watching, thank you. For those who get to watch after we are through, thank you also. And yeah, you can get past the imposter syndrome and be the best version of yourself. Just go and do it. This has been Now Tell Us. I've been your host, Anthony Murore. We've had a very wonderful guest today, Dagna, and we appreciate her. And that's about it. Until next time, go and be the best. It's bye for now. Bye.